Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it is my absolute honor to have Lynne Wester on with me. For those of you who don't know, I'm a bit of a fan of Lynne. I write about her all the time in my blog, and I think that I'm so honored to have her here. So Lynne strongly believes that donor relations is the key to unlocking fundraising success, and that organizations must be dedicated to the donor experience, or as some folks call it, the DX, as they are to the ask itself. Known for positively disrupting the status quo, Lynne helps organizations when they need it the most, when crisis or opportunity arrive. Lynne and her teammates at the DRG partner with nonprofits large and small on a variety of initiatives, from developing sound strategy and vision to utilizing technology and creating meaningful donor engagement, all designed to positively impact the fundraising bottom line. In addition, she's a passionate advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, access, justice, and belonging, especially in the fundraising and nonprofit sector. Lynne regularly contributes to national publications such as the Washington Post, the Chronicle of Philanthropy, and Case Currents as a subject matter expert. She's a 4-time author and has contributed to 2 other books. She also hosts the #1 podcast in the world, Fundraising is Funny, alongside Clay Buck. Lynne delivers thought-provoking fundraising lessons with keen focus on the donor experience, internationally known as the industry expert on donor relations. Her Southern accent and crucial honesty resonate in large rooms and in small ones. Lynne received her BA from the University of South Carolina, holds a master's in strategic fundraising and philanthropy, and proudly sports a doctorate from Disney Institute. She volunteers at many nonprofits and serves on the University of South Carolina board. Most definitely. So I read your books, and I've really come to realize with you that words really do matter. You talk about the difference in between leadership and management, or philanthropist and generous person. I, too, am kind of like a stickler for words. For instance, I hate the phrase planned giving because I think
like all giving is just spontaneous and happens out of nowhere.
Exactly. I think that every meaningful gift is planned to some extent. When you buy the Girl Guide cookies from the next door neighbor's kids, that's probably not planned, but I really don't think of that as philanthropy anyways.
Right.
It's a different thing. But you articulate the difference between leadership and management quite a lot in your book. And many people use those terms erroneously, interchangeably, right? They're just synonyms. But they do mean very, very different things. So looking back, what's your favorite part about being the professional fundraiser? And then, I'm going to also ask you what your least favorite part is.
So I like that you've picked up on that. And, there are degrees out there for nonprofit management, but not nonprofit leadership much.
Right.
Which is why when I went to get my master's degree, I got one in strategic fundraising and philanthropy, I didn't want to manage a nonprofit. I wanted to learn how to be a great fundraiser and build relationships. Not that those two are mutually exclusive, but I think that, in our field, as in many fields, one of the ways to advance in your career is to have what we call direct reports, people who report into you, people that you manage, but people who I like to think I lead.
Right.
And we have a lot of managers in our world. To me, a task list is something you managed. A project is something you manage. But when you manage a human being, you're prescribing that the same treatment go for every unique individual, and that I treat you all the same. And there's also that confusion between fairness and equity then.
Right.
I have to treat everybody fairly. That means equity. Not necessarily.
Right.
And so as a person who has been managed, and, I'm kind of like a little bit of a wild horse or a Mustang, people are like, oh, if I could just break her, then she'll, fall in line and stop having these big visions and ideas. No, I'm just going to run away from the management, and I'm not going to be happy, and I'm not going to want to contribute because I'm not being led, I'm being managed. And I really do try to lead people and have that be my guidepost. And I look for people who display leadership characteristics, even when it's, uncomfortable or hard, or, the first question you asked me, you said, I have to be able to be comfortable enough within myself to not just say, yes, it's all about the ask. And then I
Right.
have to lead and thought lead and say, yes, the ask is one part of it, but in my opinion, right? And I think we don't have enough of that, and we don't encourage enough of that in
Right.
our industry, because we like homogeny and sameness, and we are the world of decision by committee, which basically means no decision at all.
Mhm.
And so if I think about it in terms of fundraising, a lot of the donors that we're dealing with, the generous people, they don't want us to manage them. They want us, a true art of fundraising is matching a donor's passion or care or emotion in some way with a fundraising opportunity that the organization has.
Right.
And it's also about knowing when there's not a good match or not a good fit. And that is leadership rather than trying to manage to the middle.
Yes.
Management gets us things like benchmarking, where I'm navel gazing at another nonprofit, not leading the way. People say, oh, I want to be on the cutting edge, but they don't. They don't always. And so that can reflect itself in our industry. So for me, words matter, but I also know that words can get us in a bind, get us in a pinch, and there is always room for grace. And grace is one of my favorite words.
Yes.
Grace with people, because after all, we're human beings, and management doesn't give grace.
Right.
Leadership gives grace in my world. And so those are just, those differences manifest themselves in the everyday and also in the extraordinary time when people are placed under pressure, or an extraordinary circumstance. When I'm in an extraordinary circumstance, I want to be around a leader. I want to be around a first follower. I think those folks are important. Mm-hmm. I want to, not everybody, there's this myth that everybody needs to be a leader.
Right.
And that's not true as well. But I do want to be led. I don't want to be managed in a time of crisis. And I feel that when we manage, especially in times of crisis, people can feel that. You're being read a story. You're, right. People, know that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That was really eloquently put. I like that.
Thanks.
And that's a big thing. I know there's a big difference in between leading and managing. And, I was asked to be a reference for someone once, and they said, well, how does so-and-so like to be managed? I'm like, they don't.
No.
They don't like to be managed. No. They like to feel that they're part of a team. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of humans that like to be managed. And I think that being part of a team is important, but also in our industry, I want us to strive to think about individual contributors, that you don't have to manage people to be an excellent contributor to your organization. And oftentimes, some of the best fundraisers aren't great leaders or managers, but they're wonderful relationship builders.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily give them the skill set to lead. I worked at a lot of universities, and so you go to management training where they tell you how to fill out HR paperwork and look for fall risks in the hallway, or what to do if an employee comes late to work. But they don't tell you what to do when an employee comes to you and says, I don't feel safe with this donor, or I'm having an ethical conundrum about something that was presented to me, or I saw somebody do something that it doesn't feel right. What do I do? And so that comes with leadership, and we're not always training for leaders.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I'm a strong advocate that you can kind of learn something from anybody. Everyone has something to offer, right? There's that expression, anyone can lead the band. So I've often found that I learn things from donors when I'm on visits. Oh. So what's something that you have learned from a donor?
Oh my goodness. The list is long and I think for me, if I had to pick one that stood out,
Sure.
is that donors are just as uncomfortable talking about money as everybody else. And just because a person has wealth or resources doesn't mean that they are comfortable talking about money. And a lot of times we want to visit with donors over a meal or in a place that makes us feel comfortable. And are we thinking about what makes the donor feel comfortable? But this is, fundraising is 90% emotional.
Right.
10% rational.
Yeah.
And when you talk to donors, you realize that they get choked up. They get, not everybody wants to have an emotional conversation over Steak Diane, and the more I travel the world and learn about fundraising globally, the more I also realize that different cultures, of course, have different mores around food and so it's, are we making our donors feel comfortable, and are we acknowledging that this might be the first time they've ever talked about giving a gift this big, or that just they may have been asked 100 times and never given, but this may be the time that they want to engage in that conversation, and it may be more difficult than we anticipate because there's a human being with a heart at the center of all this, and I think we look at them as dollar signs or capacity ratings, or, the way we talk about donors sometimes is just icky.
Yes.
And a donor early on, he said, this is, how do you talk to people about money all day? And I'm like, I don't. I talk to them about everything but the money. And he goes, so we're not going to have to talk about money all night? I'm like, absolutely not.
Right.
That would make my stomach hurt. And he's like, oh. And so that really taught me, because the gift is really never about the money.
Right. The money's just a tool.
The money is a tool. That's why I say when fundraising is emotional, the rational part is, do I have enough money to pay for it, and how am I going to pay for the gift I want to make? So that's probably one of the biggest lessons I learned from a donor.
Wow. That's a great lesson. Definitely.
It's a good one, right?
Yeah. Lynne, this has been absolutely an eye-opener. I think that what you boil stuff down to is just common sense things, right? Like there's nothing that we've kind of talked about that is, rocket science that you need to have, a neurological degree in. It's just treating people decently, and honestly and frankly. And I think that, that will go such a long way.
Yeah. And I think building relationships takes that, right?
Yeah. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go? What's the best way of going about that?
Sure. Donorrelations.com. Really easy. Or they can reach out on social at Donor Guru. LinkedIn, just search my name. I'm there. I love to connect. You can follow our podcast at fundraisingisfunny.com. It's on Spotify and Apple and all the others. Come have a laugh with us. We love to laugh. We're not trying to do anything serious.
Right.
We're literally there to laugh about the nutsiness that is fundraising. So come join us and have a chuckle some morning. It's 20 minutes of your life that hopefully you'll at least laugh half of that. So we believe in it.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Lynne.
Oh, thanks so much, Jack.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.